Bob, when did you first get involved in boat racing?
Well, I started when I was 15, back in Wisconsin, so racing stock outboards. And that was my start. I was introduced to people that had raced before, and they worked with me. They sold me their equipment after they were getting up to the end of their career. So I had a good start, actually, with experienced people. And from there, I went into what's called the pro division of outboards, modified division, which was a step up in speed, and raced that from till 1973. And then I took a job at Mercury in 1972, actually. I raced one more year before I stopped racing outboards, and went to work for the Mercury race team in Oshkosh. And at that time they had 4 or 5 drivers employed at full time at their race division. And about a year and a half later, I was the only one. I was the only driver they kept. And things just kept going on and on and on. And after 5 years with Mercury, I went over to Europe and switched to outboard marine OMC engines, and teamed up with Ronald Molinari. At that time, before that, we both were at Mercury, and we both left at the same time and went to OMC, and we worked out of his factory in Como, Italy, which he built boats and raced and built motorboats. And that ended when I was getting too old to race. I came back to the States and came back to Washington State and tried to build boats for racing, but the area was a little bit short of money, I guess you would say, and it was not a profit-making situation. So after a few years of that, and I started looking into making propellers. We did a lot of work with propellers in Italy, changing what was available, and we came up with a propeller that we machined and fit together from 2 3-blades. I made a 6-blade, and surprisingly, that ran just as fast as a 3-blade with quite a few RPM less because it was way too big. So we put that on the shelf for a while, and started thinking about how we could make more propellers. And I left Italy 1978, and then started making propellers in the late 80s. And at that time, out in Washington State here, the Unlimiteds were the premier class of racing. So I started working with the people that were involved in the Unlimited class, and they said they needed propellers and they didn't have a good way to make them. So together with Ron Jones at that time, Ron Jones Sr., he and I thought about it, and he had a few connections with CNC people, and we contacted them and we sat down and we made the first CNC propeller back in about 1991. made for the circus boat at that time. And we were learning. We didn't have the experience. We didn't have the engineering to make machining, to do machining or programming. And we got started. We learned. We got started. We started making more propellers for the Unlimiteds, and that's how it started. And after a few years, we had the opportunity to work with Tom Gentry, the Gentry Eagle, because he had a boat, a 50-foot offshore boat that he had 4 engines in it, 4 supercharged and turbocharged 480 cubic inch engines that went into 2 drives. So it was 2 engines to 1 propeller, and it was probably 2,600 horsepower into 1 propeller. And he said he just could not find any propellers that would stay together. So I said, I'll try and make something. And we made the first set for him, and he was pretty happy. So after that, he funded everything I did for the next 2 or 3 years, tooling and made dies and forgings and bought more equipment. And until up to the time when, I believe it was 1993, he was racing at Key West. It was his last race that he was going to compete in, and he was going to recross the Atlantic. He was planning a new boat, 180-foot long tunnel boat with 4 light Tycombing turbine engines in it. It was supposed to have like 12,000 horsepower, and we were gonna make propellers for that boat. And unfortunately, he got into an accident in Key West, and he died there. So that put an end to the Gentry era, and I had to go on by myself after that. And I learned through the 90s, and got involved with the offshore people more, and it's been the best success with the offshore people that you can imagine. So up to this point, I think 90% of our business is with offshore or offshore type propellers. Went to the pleasure boats, which run just as fast as the race boats. And then when I got up to this, through the 2000, I retired in 2005, and now I'm retired.
Show everyone what you've been holding in your hand there, or your lap.
This is the first propeller that I made. It's not been made the way we do it now, because we didn't have that type of technology in 1986. But this propeller from panogram method machining, which copies from one model to a finished product, and I needed this propeller because we were going for the speed record for outboards, and at that time the record was 170 and 159 rather, excuse me, 159, and we raised it up to 170 with this type of propeller. And of course, we have more horsepower, faster boats. So this is the first one I made for a record attempt.
Who was driving the boat, Bob?
I don't track the boat.
So you still hold the record, don't you?
Well, the record's still in the record books with UIM. They have so many different records for anything you want to make a record for. So it's not, at this day, it's not the fastest outboard, but it's the fastest outboard with, under some restrictions.
For its era.
So,
I think, isn't it still the fastest outboard?
no, the fastest outboard was 176.
That's the one when Garber went back and redid it.
Yeah, we went back with methanol fuel and nitrous,
Right.
and that wasn't legal for racing. This was, my record was with a production, a race production engine, gasoline and
Pump gas.
and oil. But it also set the record for what was called then the Formula One class, which was 165, and that had to have a minimum weight for the motor and driver, so it was a little slower. But anyway, the record now, this was set 24 years ago, 1986, and with the technology we have now and the horsepower that's available, I believe the speed of about 200 would be possible. But it's very dangerous. The hardest thing I think to do would be to find water safe enough to go that speed.